Spit Studios in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. This is the Spit Sports Show. Now, I am very, very aware that the Stanley Cup Finals are going on right now. Game 3 is tonight, but I didn't want to make a full reaction to the series until I see at least one game of Edmonton playing on their home ice, because so far there really isn't that much to talk about. Florida is dominating, but there are interesting things going on around the National Hockey League, namely the Canucks' free agency, which this season is going to be fascinating for the Vancouver Canucks from June to September, because their cap is obviously going up 4.5 mil as all of the other teams are. But unlike a lot of the other teams, the Canucks really have most of their core pieces, if not all of their core pieces, locked up long term. So a lot of other teams are going to be using this cap space to make sure that their key pieces are around for the future. Whereas the Canucks have a lot more in between the margins decisions to make. But that doesn't mean that those decisions aren't fascinating and really, really interesting in terms of the GM's perspective. And that starts with Elias Lindholm. Now, the Canucks seem to be currently maxed out for Lindholm at 7 million for 7 years, which makes sense to them. He is a piece that can be moved around the lineup a lot. He can play anywhere from the third line to the first line. But other teams that don't have the same center forward depth that the Canucks do, they're going to pay upwards of $8 million for him. And that's what starts such an interesting debate, because the Canucks are in a really tough spot right now. A really tough spot. Lindholm is not an easy piece to replace. He is incredibly versatile. He's really, really good defensively, which he was a big reason for the Canucks' second half defensive improvement. He's awesome in the faceoff dot. Clearly, the guys seem to have a real connection with him. And overall, he's just a piece where you can fit anywhere into the lineup and feel good about it. He can play third line wing and you'll feel like, yes, that third line wing spot's taken care of. Or he could play first line center and you'd feel like, yep, we got a competent player up there. And one of the biggest reasons the Canucks value him is that versatility. But it appears to be that might be one of the same reasons he's going to want to leave. Like, not only does he want to get paid like a high-end second line center, which his numbers and performance in the playoffs would tell you he deserves, he wants to be played like one too. So Elliot Friedman said this on the 32 Thoughts podcast the other day. There's a couple things at play to recognize. Someone made a very good point to me, and they said that Lindholm may not be a person who likes the idea of being a third line center or a guy that gets moved around to the wing a lot. So this is an issue because the Canucks don't really have, set in stone forward lines. They have a lot of versatility. JT Miller can go to the wing. You obviously can put the Lotto line together. You can put Pettersson on the wing. Now, if we're going to lose Lindholm, which looks in all likelihood like it's going to happen, replacements could be, a Max Domi, and Alex Wenberg, Chandler Stevenson. But a lot of those players leave a lot to be desired when compared to Lindholm. And the fact that we gave up assets for him and are just going to lose him after one season where we made the second round, it's disappointing for sure. But losing Lindholm could free up room to sign other players, who I'm going to get into later in the video. Now, the other really interesting one is Filip Hronek. Now, Hronek's going to be an RFA after this year. He's got a qualifying offer at 5.28. You're probably going to need about 7 to 8 mil to re-sign him, though. I'd be shocked if someone doesn't offer sheet him for at least that. Now, the word around Vancouver currently is if they can't get a deal for him by the draft, they're going to be looking to trade him, which makes total sense to me. I think he's a serviceable top 2 defenseman. I don't think he's anything special. I don't think him and Hughes have, this crazy chemistry to the point where you can't lose him under any circumstances. I think he's a hard defenseman to replace, though. Right-handed top 2 potential defensemen who, are as good at puck moving as he is, and he's way better in the corners than people want to give him credit for. It's tough. It's tough to lose that guy. And It looks like in all likelihood they're going to get some kind of deal done. But if they don't, once again, with maybe losing Hronek and Lindholm plus the 4.5 million in cap space, it gives the Canucks a lot of room to maneuver with the free agency pool that's out there this year. Add on to that the players that they need to re-sign in their depth pool. Now, would I like to re-sign Hronek? Of course. It just makes sense having that right-handed shot beside Hughes that Hughes is already comfortable playing with. But anything over 8, even 7.5 is pushing it for me. I think we got to be smart, especially with him as an RFA and us still having some control over his contract situation. Now, if we don't end up signing Hronek, I think re-signing Joshua is going to be a relatively easy thing to do, considering the fact that Joshua looks like he's worth about 3.5 in the open market. But it seems likely the Canucks would re-sign him from anywhere from 2.5 to 3. That's because Joshua clearly enjoys it in Vancouver. He's made a home here. He's had his career season here. He's undisputedly a fan favorite, and his playoff run last year makes him deserve a raise. There's no doubt about it. Now, Joshua probably signs here from, like I said, anywhere from 2.5 to 3, which is about the same area of money that we're probably going to re-sign Teddy Bluger for. Now, I'm pretty into Teddy Bluger. I think he's just a man's man as a depth piece. I don't think he's going to do anything great for you, but he's also just a smart enough player as to where he's not really going to make any mistakes either. Now, it's not the sexy thing to talk about, them signing, Joshua Bluger and Sam Lafferty, who Lafferty's such a whatever for me. If he wants a million and a half, we've got it for him here in Vancouver. If he wants a chance at anything more than that, bye-bye, buddy. I'm sorry. He's a worse version of Bluger. That's what he is. And you can find Sam Lafferty's all over the league. And speaking of depth pieces who people seem to be kind of into re-signing, everyone in Vancouver seems to be super into re-signing Ian Cole. And on paper, I get why. He's a good veteran D-man to have back there. He's physical. He's a playoff archetype, no doubt about it. Listen, I get he wants to come back. Management loves him. It seems like everything adds up to him re-signing for a decent contract. But in my opinion, I think the Canucks need one more solid puck-moving D-man. It just seemed evident to me in the playoffs, especially against the Oilers, that whenever that top 2 pair wasn't on the ice, the Canucks were too prone to getting hemmed in their zone because their D-men weren't mobile enough. When you have Ian Cole and Zadorov out there, or, Myers and Zadorov, like, that's just not a very mobile set of D. And that makes it so it's harder to break out and harder to flip the momentum of the ice, especially when the other team is constantly hemming you in their zone. The ice is tilting your way. I wouldn't be mad at letting Ian Cole go, especially after Patrick Alvin, the Canucks' GM, said bluntly that he wants to add more speed to the team. Ian Cole brings a lot of things. Speed is at the very bottom of that list. But speaking of speed and speaking of excitement, I wasn't speaking of excitement, but I'm talking about excitement now. Jake Guentzel. He has been tied to the Canucks since the trade deadline, it seems like. It seemed like it was between him and Lindholm as the two big targets that the Canucks were going to go after. Obviously, they went with the latter rather than the former. But Guentzel let it be known to the Hurricanes really early that he intends to test out free agency after negotiations didn't go as they expected after the Hurricanes lost in the second round. And as of last week, in a move that doesn't happen a whole lot, the Hurricanes made it very well known to teams around the National Hockey League that Guentzel was available for a trade. And the asking price reportedly was a mid-round pick. So it looks like to me and to pretty much every hockey mind out there that they're projecting that it's going to be a lost asset, that Guentzel isn't going to re-sign there. So with that in mind, If there was one glaring issue for the Canucks across the entire playoff run, and I would argue end of the regular season as well, it's that there was a distinct lack of scoring talent to play alongside of Elias Pettersson. Now, I think that you could rotate Pettersson into some different lineups, but in general, if you want him playing at center, you're going to need some kind of scoring winger for him to go along with. Ilya Mikheyev isn't going to do it. And with how the Canucks' free agency has played out so far and how the biggest reporters in the world are seeing it play out in the future, I think Guentzel coming to the Canucks is a 70% possibility plus. And this is what Friedman had to say on the Jeff Merrick show the other day. I think the Canucks are conceding that they won't be able to do Lindholm. I never want to say never, but as it stands right now, I think they're moving on and asking, okay, who's our next target? Well, let me tell you, you might want to use that next target and potentially $8 million you're saving to address your most glaring weakness in the forward core. So other players that fit that archetype are Nick Ehlers, Tyler Toffoli, Jake DeBrusk, who I wouldn't be against any of those players, especially Ehlers, to be honest with you. I think Ehlers and Pettersson would be a really, really interesting duo. But if a player like Lindholm and even a Hronek are going to be off your books, you have an extra bit of money to spend on the premium product. And Jake Guentzel is undoubtedly the premium product. He's a dog. He's a proven playoff performer. He scores clutch goals. He's played with one of the best hockey players of all time, Sidney Crosby. I don't know. Maybe that osmosis helps with Pettersson. It's a thought. But I think Guentzel signing is not only the right move for the roster, I think it's also the right move for the Canucks as an organization. If you're going to be losing Lindholm after you just traded for him for nothing and potentially your top two right-handed defensemen, you've got to give the fan base something to be excited about. And Jake Guentzel is just that. A 40-goal scorer, 100-point guy, a guy who just simply can really do it all. He's a power play merchant. He can be. He's a really, really perfect fit for what the Canucks need this offseason. Another big scoring spark off the wing. And if they get that, even if they do lose Hronek, I think they'd re-sign Myers if they lose Hronek. If they lose Zadorov, they probably re-sign Myers and go into free agency. I think Guentzel would bring an extra level of excitement to next season for the Canucks fans. And probably the Canucks roster in general, knowing that they just added another top-end scoring talent to their team. If you lose Lindholm, Hronek, Zadorov, all of them, and you come back with, a Nick Ehlers or an Alex Wenberg, it doesn't bring the same jolt of electricity that a Jake Guentzel would. So I think that's definitely the target they need to look at if it's true that Lindholm isn't resigning. And I hope they do. I'm super excited to see what the Canucks get done this offseason. Let me know, what do you guys think the Canucks should get done this offseason? Are there any targets that I didn't mention throughout this video that you think the Canucks should take an extra hard look at? Should they re-sign Casey DeSmith? Just little stuff like that. Please let me know in the comments below. I am small enough as to where I can read all comments, and I love doing so, so please let me know down there. Please subscribe if you haven't already. We are so close to 300 subscribers on this channel, which is just bonkers to me. Like, it really is. I might do a subscriber special for that, but I kind of want to save it for 1,000, so we'll see. Please leave a like on the video if you enjoyed what you heard, and as always, I will see you in the next video. Peace out.